Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist, and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist, and the world's friendliest financial fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, as we consider these tough decisions, we're at part 3 of decision fatigue in your retirement. And to help us kick off another episode, Mr. Trey Juergens and Wes Walker. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
And I'm going to kind of throw a curveball at you. I hadn't planned on doing this, but yesterday, I'll address this to you, Wes. I was contacted by someone who was looking for, and I'll describe what they said, a private credit investment involving school loans paying as high as 10% guaranteed. And I thought, all right, Wes, research this. What in the world are they talking about?
These are being pitched a lot on TV, radio, the internet. What this is an alternative investment. It's technically a private placement or a private credit offering. What that means is basically they've packaged together thousands of delinquent and defaulted student loans into one investment product. And then they have different tiers of interest rates based on how long you plan to hold this investment for. But that's what's being marketed to this person, whether they know it or not exactly.
Well, that was very interesting. And that, I saw the interest rates they're paying, and it caught my attention at first until you kind of provided some information. So a lot of things to be aware of, which ties into what we're talking about today. And today's issue deals with how to handle taxes on retirement withdrawals. So I did want to get that out of the way because I didn't know what that particular investment was. That really threw me for a curve. So let's talk about this. One of the big things we see out there, and Trey, we can address this. People come to us, they're retired or nearing retirement, and they got these big old 401k plans. And quite frankly, and I can empathize with them. They've been working all their life, saving into these 401ks. Now comes crunch time, and they got to know how much to pull out. What are the taxes on it? Help us explain to the audience our role in this process.
Yeah, our role in this process is giving you a guide on how to use, enjoy, protect this money, but you need to start taking some out. And when we lay out a game plan, we give you a guide on how to do that. A lot of the time, our clients have heard all about this tax tumor you talk about, and they're terrified to start taking money out. But when you understand how Social Security, maybe pensions, these IRA distributions all work together in determining that tax bracket, we can give a lot of guidance on that.
And Wes, just yesterday, somebody was in talking about this. Then I saw an article today talking about this. More and more advisors are realizing that, you just can't draw money out of there. People are understanding that you got to have tax strategies. So even when somebody comes on a new client, I know you handle a lot of their investments and take a lot of questions. What are some typical things you might hear from people who call in who are current clients and getting into these tax strategies and things they need to be aware of before they just start dragging money out?
Yeah, 2 different elements to the plan is, when are we going to take money out and from which accounts? What order do they kind of come out in? So that gets to be very important from an investment strategy perspective. It's not very complicated, but if you just think about it, like if your time horizon is longer and you have a decent risk tolerance, you've got the ability to afford yourself to take more risk with the account itself. So a lot of times I'll find myself talking to people, looking at accounts and saying, hey, we might be taking withdrawals from this for the next 3 to 5 years. I doubt you're going to want to be too gung-ho with this while we're yanking money out of it. Whereas they might have a separate account that, we're not planning on touching for a decade or longer, where they are, okay taking some more aggressive risk with.
And then also, Trey, it comes into a lot of people retiring younger. They're not even 65. We're seeing more and more of this. You've got that window, let's say they're age 60 to 65. Why is that important? Because they're out here searching for health insurance, and maybe they go on Obamacare or trying to get subsidies in terms of withdrawing these money out of these tax-infested 401ks.
Yeah, so your modified adjusted gross income is a very important factor in determining health insurance premiums. So when you're out there in the marketplace and all of a sudden you've retired and you start taking some money out, say you're wanting to pay the house off, which we'll talk about in a little bit, paying a car off, whatever it is, and you, as you've described, willy-nilly taking these distributions out and you throw yourself into a much higher tax bracket, there's a ripple effect across all your financial life that is going to happen.
And even we talk about the rippling effects of something called IRMA. And we have studied this, and I've been aware of it and advised people on it. But here I am, I just turned 65. I've got Medicare Part B and all this supplement stuff that I've been advising people on. Now it's the real world. And because of the money I make, I'm into what's called IRMA. So describe to the audience, if you don't have any after-tax money, how that can also come back to bite you with these tax-infested IRAs and 401k plans.
Yeah, so IRMA takes, again, into account the 2 years prior to starting your Medicare Part B premiums. It's a calculation based on all your income. And unfortunately, sometimes we have business owners that sell a business. We have families that downsize and sell a home that they might have not lived in for more than 2 years. A lot of things that could throw their income up, and in turn, their Medicare Part B premiums are going to be extremely high.
Give us an example of what happens in the real world and people come to us and they're not tax diversified, and how this can be a dilemma as well when you need money.
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. The tax diversification in retirement is huge. Having some money at the bank, having some Roth IRAs, having some different accounts that you could potentially pull from. And we get those phone calls, 10 times a day sometimes. Hey, I need X. I think 2023 was the year of the pole barn. And I don't know how many of our clients built them, but if we had a little side hustle on building pole barns, we would have been good. But it was, hey, I need X amount of money. I've got these accounts with you. That's where I'm going to pull it from. And we just took a look at things, maybe called TJ, factored in what their income was for that year, and gave them an answer.
And then, Wes, over to you. Sometimes we have people that transfer large accounts over to us, but they're what's called after tax. So these are securities sometimes have done very well, but they have large capital gains. So what's the problem in just telling people to liquidate them and let's move them on over to us and we'll handle them from there?
That could be a very dangerous prospect. Yeah, an after-tax brokerage account is taxed differently from a qualified retirement account. A qualified retirement account might be an IRA where any withdrawals are taxed at the time you take it out of the account, whereas a Roth IRA might be, tax-free on the withdrawals that you take out. An after-tax brokerage account is money that you've put in from the bank, added into this brokerage account, and then bought securities inside the account. The way that's taxed is either at short-term or long-term capital gains rates. If you've held the security for less than a year and you sell it at a gain, you'll pay ordinary income rates on that gain. And if you've held it for longer than a year, you'll pay long-term capital gains rates. If you were to liquidate an entire account and realize all the capital gains that are inlaid within the account, you would realize capital gains on the entirety of that gain. So it can be a very precarious prospect for someone who's looking to liquidate an entire non-qualified account.
And for the audience, not to be confused when I'm getting ready to talk about, we don't do tax returns, by the way, folks. But Trey, speak to that, the privilege and honor we have of having Leanne and TJ in the office, because there's times when we can get out of a securities account after tax. Capital gains aren't that bad and it doesn't affect them, but being able to rely on them to run the calculations before we make those moves.
Oh, it's huge. We had, just this week, we had a client, they were pulling some accounts over that, fortunately for them, have made some money. They were not super tied to those investments, however. They kind of had a rub with their previous advisor. They wanted to get it into something we would recommend. So in doing that, we called Leanne, called TJ. Once this cost basis information comes over, we're going to come up with a plan of attack to get out of that and into something with us.
Good stuff, gentlemen. We've got to take a quick break. Actually, I'm excited about this client spotlight. Aaron and Derek went to this gentleman's home, been a client for years, but the hobby he is indulging in that he and his wife used to indulge in, since she passed, he's taken it back up. So we got a good client spotlight coming up. You stay tuned, folks, and we'll be back also with our own Heather Hughes. This is the Worry-Free Retirement. We'll be right back.
The individuals in this interview are uncompensated clients at the time of filming. Their opinions expressed were provided to Worry-Free Productions for use as an advertisement by Tony Walker Financial. Please refer to Form CRS and Form ADV Part 2B Disclosure Brochure for information regarding the advisory services offered by Tony Walker Financial.
I'm Dave Sinclair. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I've been retired for 9 years. Retired in 2016. I worked at a company called Safety Co. And it's a company that puts out cones, barrels, do lane closures and stuff. You start getting up in age, it takes its toll on you. I worked there 30 years, and 30 years is enough. My favorite thing about being retired is you're kind of your own boss, and that's what I like. If I want to sleep in, I can sleep in. Anything I want to do like that. my pastime and my hobbies is building miniatures. Yeah, my wife got me started. She was a member of the Louisville Miniature Club. She would come home and show me what she made, and I'd be like, "Oh, that is so cool." And then she's like, "Well, why don't you go to the meetings with me?" And once I went there and I started making it myself, that was it. It kind of snowballed from there. My favorite miniature I made is Joe B. I call it the Wild Card Bar. That's my favorite, just because I got Denny Crum and Joe B. Hall autographed it for me, so I had to say it's my favorite of all of them. Some of them did pretty good. There was a few I kind of struck out on. But this part of it, I stepped away when my wife passed away in 2013, and I didn't do it for 5 years because she's always there to help me. But then my sister-in-law, her sister, was like, Geddy wouldn't want you to stop doing something that you love doing just because she's gone now. And she kind of talked me and said, well, why not? So then I got back, started back again. Life's short, so if you got a chance to enjoy it, enjoy it. I wanted to build just a town, and I mean, now it's too big to go on the fair, because I have to have a truck to get in there. But build my own city, and I'm named after my dog, Roxy. I love my sports, and my Cardinal and the Bengals fan. I got to actually meet the guy that owns the Bengals. Every year, if you had season tickets, you get to go ahead with that fan appreciation. You get to go up the stadium and meet people and walk through the locker rooms and all that. The first thing about Tony, about seeing his commercial on TV, I think the thing that drove me to Tony was no box money. I want to know how much I'm getting a month. I don't want to be like stop and work, go up and down. You're just scared to death, and that you're going to lose everything. Yeah, but if you're going to retire, you need to contact Tony if it's in your plan, because he does a great job. Yes, definitely, I would definitely recommend Tony.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and we're into part 3 of decision fatigue. And with us, obviously, in the studio via Zoom from Bowling Green is our fellow fiduciary there, Miss Heather Hughes. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning, Tony.
And we have already covered several things on retirement withdrawals, but I really wanted you in on this conversation because now we're getting to something that is really, really touchy for savers, and it's this notion of going into retirement and having debt, particularly debt on their home. What experience have you seen with many of our savers who do not like the idea of having a home full of debt during retirement?
Well, that's the thing. I've seen some studies out there. University of Michigan had recently done a study that said Americans over 75 who are currently carrying a mortgage right now rose from 5% in 1995. So meaning 75 years or older, 1995, only 5% of those groups had a mortgage debt. And up to in 2022, it rose to 25%. So there's definitely a lot of retirees out there that do carry mortgages. Those just in the age 65 and over, it's about 51% of people that are still carrying mortgages going into retirement. That is a big stressor for most retirees. They want to be debt-free in retirement, and there's certain ways to get there.
Were you aware of that study, Trey? I had not heard those statistics. That's pretty high. That's a big increase.
It's more than I would expect. We've seen here recently a lot of refinancing in the low interest rate environment during COVID, which has been favorable for people that do have money that they owe in their homes, but still carrying any kind of a mortgage, low interest rate or not, into retirement. Sometimes savers just don't like it.
As you mentioned, Trey, the interest rates have been lower, so a lot of people take that philosophy, a lower interest rate, they can invest those proceeds, hopefully for a better return. Those are going to be more of the investor bent type of people. But a lot of our clients, we see they want the ability to be debt-free in retirement. And oftentimes we can help them with that. Ideally, if they wanted to pay off debt, we look to non-qualified money first, mainly because for the most part, that taxes have been paid on that. Retirement accounts, we can try to manage capital gains if we need to sell off assets like that. Lastly, then we would probably move to looking at qualified accounts. The problem with that, it comes with a pretty hefty tax bill.
Yeah, and what I was going to ask you, Wes, and from the investor standpoint, back to that article as I think out loud, yeah, maybe a lot of people refinanced, and we see that sometimes. People come in with 2% and 3% mortgages, but still speak to the savers who, even though it may be 2 or 3%, what's their response to that debt in retirement versus investing the difference and playing that game?
All goes back to someone's financial personality. An investor even a speculator, that kind of person would see borrowing at 2% as free money. And you would invest that and earn the spread beyond 2% easily. There should be no reason for you to pay off that mortgage in their mind. But a saver is somebody who, really just does not like to be under the burden of any debt whatsoever. So even to pay off a low interest mortgage might make a lot of sense to them just for peace of mind. So it's not always a numbers question. A lot of times it's a mindset and a psychology question as well.
And Heather, you've been involved in many of these transactions. Kind of speak to how our tax department comes in to help people analyze and sometimes how we even spread out those payments to them maybe over a 2 or 3 year period to keep them in those lower brackets. Give us an example of how we might help somebody figure out if it's best to go on and use tax-infested dollars to pay off a mortgage.
Well, that's exactly right, Tony. Sometimes it's better to spread it out over time than trying to pay it off all at once. They can continue making mortgage payments, but instead of having 15 years left on the mortgage, we may be able to pay it off in 3. That way, they're not taxed as heavily as they would if they just tried to take it out as a lump sum. But our tax department is great. TJ Reagan and Leanne Tinsley will both run those calculations just to see what might be the best solution if paying off a mortgage is a priority for a client.
And back to this access to having cash, more and more people are, and we're encouraging it. When you first started with me almost 20 years ago, Heather, if somebody walked in with $60,000 in the bank, and I know interest rates were low back then, we would have quickly moved them somewhere. What is our position now when a lot of these savers come in and they've got large 401ks and many of them don't have hardly anything in savings? Why is that after-tax account, even if it's not making a lot of money, why is that so important in planning for retirement?
Well, you never know what's going to happen in life. So to have some good contingency funds also allows us to do some additional tax planning. If they've got substantial cash on hand, it gives us a little more flexibility on what we can do in terms of tax planning as far as paying off a home, Roth conversions, anything like that. So, and just with the uncertainty of the market, as we've seen over several years, with COVID, 2022, if we want to go back as far as 2008, having cash on the sidelines is sometimes really beneficial for all of that market volatility.
Trey, I'll kind of turn over to you in the time remaining here. It's kind of interesting. I had somebody in the other day and they said, you all are sending us this money based on the game plan. And they said, we're really not spending it all. And it's just going into savings. And what would be my response to something like that be?
Use and enjoy it.
Yeah. So, and why would we do that based on the tax brackets? What are we doing sometimes in these game plans and playing around with these tax brackets and taking advantage of, quite frankly, right now, some people are still in a 12% bracket.
Yeah. Retirement planning is cash flow planning. If we've got a plan to not run out of money and we can send you money here in these earlier tax years, while you may want to travel or gift some money to kids, use and enjoy that money. We're spending some accounts down, so at 73 for RMDs, you don't have to take money out and possibly throw yourself into a higher tax bracket then.
Another thing I would add too is that as a beneficiary, I would much rather receive an after-tax account, a savings account, a Roth, an after-tax stock account than I would a tax-infested 401k. So to go on and take distributions from it now, maybe even bank some of the money or give it to kids while you're still alive, from a beneficiary's perspective, makes a lot of sense.
And we've only got about 30 seconds. One of the most enjoyable cases I've worked on recently, Heather, you remember this, you had some input. It was a retired couple in assisted living, had a huge IRA. Their broker was handling it. They didn't know what to do with it. We've got a strategy over the next 4 years to pay that down and gift that to family members. And I met one of the family members in the other day. They said, you don't realize how much this has helped us. So folks, maybe that's you right now. You're sitting there thinking about what can you do to improve your cash flow and these withdrawal strategies. Give us an opportunity to talk. And we've made this so easy. We call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. To talk to me personally, Tony Walker, just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that little red button to get that phone call scheduled, or call us anytime at 877-499-9255. We'll be right back with a special guest to talk more about decision fatigue, not from a material standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint. This is the Worry-Free Retirement. We'll be right back.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
Worry-Free Music presents the greatest collection of Christmas covers ever assembled.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Hey!
Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas. 486 timeless classics across 6 digitally remastered 8-track tapes.
Happy holidays!
Every song fills your home with holiday magic.
Sing ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, dong ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding.
Don't miss this opportunity to receive Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas, the perfect way to celebrate the joy of this holiday season.
Dashing through the snow, hey, and one horse open sleigh, yeah.
Only $685 plus $3 shipping and handling. Order yours today.
8-track tape player not included. Offer void where prohibited.
And from all of us at Tony Walker Financial, have a Merry Christmas.
Want to know what most advisors hate talking about? The fees they're going to charge you to manage your money. Not so with Tony Walker Financial. In fact, we are so confident in our services that we now have a posted video on our website called How We Get Paid. So before blindly handing over your money to just any advisor who won't tell you how they get paid, check out our video at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or give us a call anytime at 877-499-9255. So let me ask you a question. If we did go through another 15 years of flatlining stock market returns, would you be able to make it in retirement? Probably not. So the question is, why in the world would you be taking risk with your money at this stage of life, especially if you don't have to? Well, the only way to find out is to meet with somebody like me, Tony Walker, a trained retirement planning specialist who has literally orchestrated more than 5,000 written game plans. So to see if we might be a fit, here's all you have to do. Take advantage of something we call the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call, where you and I will talk by phone, and if I think I can be of help, we're going to meet in person. That's right, the owner of the company, to sit down and lay out this free game plan for you to review. To schedule your free phone call, simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Hey, internet not your thing? Feel free to call us anytime at 877-499-9255. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no-obligation appointment. Let us help you today. It is estimated that each day over 10,000 people will turn 65, which means a lot of advisors selling a lot of annuities. Don't get stuck in the wrong annuity. Get a second opinion from TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and we're so excited to continue this discussion on not only the financial tough decisions out there, but the things for Christians, even in those that are just searching for more meaning in life, and the difficult things that will come up and decisions we will have to make. And with us as we continue this segment, I love this stuff, is Mr. Bob Russell. Bob, thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you, Tony. As you mentioned in another program, I'm not a financial expert, so I'm going to try to stay in my lane, talk about the Bible and what the Bible says about these issues.
Well, it's so important. So the next one we're going to cover, and this would be death of a loved one and trying to move on. Bob, I'm not an expert in this field at all, but I will have to say with our large clientele, the number of retirees, we have to deal with this a lot. In fact, in 2024, I think we had 67 death claims, and we do handle those death claims, so we have to talk to people and try to help encourage them. But I'm sure in your world you've dealt with this, but help people right now that may be even going through the loss of a loved one to deal with this.
You know, one of the things in the Bible that we've forgotten is the Bible says there's a time to mourn. When someone dies, there is a significant loss. And Solomon said there's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to laugh, and a time to mourn. And people want to go on with life so fast that they don't take time to mourn. I notice this even when people die, fewer and fewer people are having funerals. They just have them cremated and move on. Well, we'll have a celebration of life at our house here, in a few weeks. But there is a purpose in mourning. And when a patriarch in the Old Testament, even ones that were 100 plus years old, when they died, God appointed a 30-day period of mourning to say, okay, something significant has passed, and let's respect the person by mourning. And people today are so accustomed to the instant society. Patience is a lost virtue, and we want to recover too fast. So if you have a loved one die and you want to move on with life, and you're mourning. And I think it's wise for a person who has a mate who dies, or somebody really close to them dies, to have a year where we say, I'm not going to make any major decisions. I'm not in an emotional state really to start dating already, or to sell my house and move, or make an impulsive decision about purchasing something. To just set aside, okay, this is a year where I'm going to adjust and recover. People will say to me, well, my mate had Alzheimer's, and my mate was in an institution, or we took care of her for a long time, and I'm very lonely. And my loneliness began when I lost her mentally. But you know what? There's still an emotional adjustment, because you were in need every day. That person had to be visited and cared for, and there's an adjustment period. And you're not in a position emotionally to make a big major decision. So my counsel to people who have a loved one die is say, don't start dating for a year. And then you be very cautious. Don't make major decisions, packing up and moving to Wyoming or something because you had a nice vacation out there. Be willing to be patient. One of the fruits of the Spirit is patience. And I think in mourning and in grief, we need to be patient and say, okay, this is the time when I'm going to wait on God.
And I don't want to hit you upside the head with this question, but I just thought about this. I've had several, especially widows, who have come to me, and even in the church setting, sometimes they'll say that, they've been going out with couples and things like that, and now their husband is no longer there, and they feel almost not ostracized, but it's a little awkward when they try to go back and befriend people or hang out with those same couple groups. What could you share with Christians who are trying to deal with those that they know have lost loved ones and try to make them still feel welcome?
Well, I've dealt with that a lot. I'm in a small group where there are 8 of us. We're couples, and a couple of years ago, the wife died, and we still get together
with him, the widow.
We include him, but he will admit he feels a little bit awkward. And I would say to people, don't cut off your former friends. Sometimes people say, well, I feel awkward, they're cutting me off, and it's probably as much one as the other. And maintain your old friendships. Continue to go to that class. Continue to be a part of that small group. Continue to invite those people over, but also be willing to expand friendships and relationships. That's true whether your mate dies or not. Some of my closest friends now weren't my friends when I was 60, because some of my friends have moved, some of my friends have died, and as you get older, you need to develop some new friends. So I would say to somebody who's lost a loved one, you do your best. You reach out and allow yourself to be included in with those old friends, but also expand your relationships.
And finally, Bob, I got to ask you this. Someone's lost a spouse. They're coming to you. They're grieving. You're trying to help them. What's the best thing you can do when they come to you and then you can tell they just want to talk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a relevant question because 2 nights ago, I was with somebody who lost a really close friend. And I started asking him about that person, and he started talking. And I prompted him to ask, tell me more. Because I heard some really good things about it. And at the end of the night, he said, thank you for letting me talk about him. Because everywhere I go, people try to avoid it because they think they're hurting me if they bring it up. But when you let me talk about him, it was really therapeutic for me tonight to be able to talk like that.
Wow, that's such good stuff. Well, Bob, thank you so much. I don't know if you know this. I've got a list of questions. We're out of time now. We are going to be right back. So, folks, I hope you're enjoying the Worry-Free Retirement. We'll be back next week. But you remember, between now and then, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.